Well, good afternoon. This is Plant Smart Living with Farmer Fred. We're so glad that you could join us today. We have a special friend here today. Her name is Lori from McDougall Friends. We've kind of known each other online through Facebook for 6 months or so, and since we began Plant Smart Living with Farmer Fred on Facebook, we spent a lot of time on different Facebook pages and McDougall Friends, and there's a few others, but I've come to know Laurie as a good friend, and she has written some essays in the past that we've used some of her essays on our page, and so we've been in communication for a short while, and we thought we would invite her and her husband over to our house, and we've had a wonderful day together. They've been here for lunch today, and got to meet her husband Bob, and they're both plant-based, and so I was really glad to hear that Bob was also plant-based. And
yes, I couldn't hold him back. He wanted to do that.
It's wonderful. I was excited. I wasn't sure where he stood.
Yes.
And so I was really glad to hear that he was plant-based. I've been plant-based for about 3 years now. I was following the standard American diet, and so I just thought it would be nice if Lori could share her experience with food and with us here, and but we're just so thankful that she could be here today. It's been a lot of fun. And so what has been some of your experiences in the past with food?
Well, I like to think that I have kind of an average American experience, and those are the things that I like to write about in my essay. I know that when you go onto the online world, the very dramatic stories are the things that capture people's attention the most. But I like to think that I was just kind of one of the average sick people.
Right.
I refer to them in one of my writings as just the walking wounded. I had not gotten sick enough to really, well, the doctors did want to give me medication, but I hadn't gotten sick enough to require tremendous interventions or hospitalizations, but I was getting progressively fatter and more debilitated, depressed, and lazier, and just sicker, and didn't know what it was.
Didn't know if the food was the cause.
Didn't know what it was, and attributed it all to normal aging.
Right.
And when I literally stumbled into this world by going online, I started making a lot of connections. It took me a while, though, but I did start to finally make those connections that could it possibly be the foods that I was eating that was making me just not quite very well,
right.
you know.
Yeah. Fat, sick, and nearly dead, as they say.
Yeah, but not devastatingly sick, just normal American sick.
Which are sick most of the time.
Normal average sick. And so over the course of 8 months, I dropped 38 pounds. But of course, much more importantly, my mind cleared, my vocabulary improved, my social skills came back. And it wasn't really until I looked back on it that I realized that I had been in trouble.
Right.
But I think that what we're used to seeing in this country are people who are so much more visibly in trouble, so much more dramatically in need of help. And so I felt like, I have a story here. It's just not very exciting, but it is a story. In fact, it's probably more commonplace than we realize.
People's lives are at stake, so it's an important story.
Yes, and mine was going downhill, Bob's was going downhill, but it was slow and natural, and you're in a routine and you don't realize how you are declining.
Kind of like a slow form of poison, they say.
Long, slow slide. I wrote an essay called The Long, Slow Slide.
Right.
And it talks about how health can just, in a very natural way, you don't feel it from day to day, and it's only after you look back on it that you realize how much you were in trouble. Right. And I was just on the cusp there where I was starting to require medication, and I was going into my later years with a lot of serious potential problems. And of course, in Bob's case, my husband's case, they had already started to manifest.
Right. Yeah, that's how it was with me, the same thing.
Terrible.
Yeah. They say you can outrun your habits for a while, but sooner or later they're going to catch up to you.
Yeah. But the thing is that I didn't know that's what I was doing. I wasn't trying to outrun anything. I wasn't trying to get away with anything or to think I will indulge in this and then I'll make... I was just really kind of living my life. But as they say, if you go with the flow, if you just go with the flow, if you don't step out of the mainstream...
You look okay. Everything seems to be well in plan. Yeah. If you're going with the flow or the mainstream, like you say, it's only to set yourself apart from everybody.
And when I started writing about the experience, I realized that people like me do... At first, I didn't want to write anything about it because I thought that well, there's really not much of a story to tell, you know. But in fact, as I started writing about it, I started expressing what I had just gone through and this transformation that took place when we switched over to plant eating. I said, I'll bet there are a lot of people just like me, the average middle-of-the-road sick person that sort of doesn't realize how sick they are.
You've gotten away from the meats and the dairies and the cheeses and the oils. You've basically changed your fuel.
Yes, I am a McDougaller. I am a McDougall. At first, I was more thinking I have to kind of go all the way and be totally raw and that type of thing. And that's very good too. I think that it's very good. But I was hungry, and I found that when I added in some of the starches, that we were just fine and enjoying. Yeah.
I was the same way. I was followed a lot of Joel Furman for a year actually, because one of his big sayings is, make salads your main meals. Well, if you times your weight by 10, that's the amount of calories you should be eating. So I should be eating about 2,000 calories per day.
In salads.
So, and 1 pound of salad has only 80 calories, so I'd have to eat over 20 pounds of greens.
Right.
Although he does promote beans. And
but
so on
as
too,
I say, I mean,
and
it does depend on the individual though, because Bob could probably live on salads. I'm the one that wants a little bit more of the starches. But he can be quite satisfied with that.
Right, yeah, everybody is a little bit different, I think.
And also everybody at different phases may need different things. So the McDougall program has that flexibility.
Right.
Dr. McDougall would never say, well, just never have a meal out of salads.
Correct.
But with that flexibility to add in foods that are a little bit more filling, you've got it all in this program.
I think he encourages about, 70% starch, I think.
He does.
And the rest green and yellow vegetables.
Right,
right. Yeah. So we love our starches here, our potatoes.
like our lunch. Our lunch today.
And we love our Swiss chard here too. Yes. That's nice and tender when you cook it, but that's not bitter like the green kale in the summer. But nevertheless, kale's good in the winter once the frost hits it, it turns nice and sweet.
You're getting in your plug for the Swiss chard again.
Gotta be moved to the front burner.
Gotta talk about the Swiss chard.
Kale is not king anymore. You got this. Swiss chard is my sweetheart, I say.
Farmer Fred is a big Swiss chard man.
You got to try Swiss chard.
It's an important issue to tell people about Swiss chard. It's a highly neglected green.
Yeah, don't forget the stalks too. They're good when you cook them.
Thank you.
So how's your energy level been, or Bob's, since all this?
Just wonderful. Just wonderful. I know that I have energy that surpasses many of my younger friends. I mean, I know this because I'm with them and I can see that I can just keep going and going.
Like the Energizer Bunny Rabbit, right?
Yes. Well, my mother, who's 90 years old, that's my nickname for her. That's my nickname for her.
That's
neat. She's the Energizer Bunny.
Yeah.
But I'm really happy with my energy level. I tend to wake up early and I tend to go to bed early. That's just my biorhythm. Bob is 65 and he is doing so well. I am.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I'm so thankful.
I tell people it's like I've taken on a set of wings. That's how much energy I have. You get out of bed and you spring out of bed. You're just not like lethargic anymore. I never used to change the oil in my car because I'd have to get under it and lay under my car because I was 65 pounds overweight. But now I'm back to changing my oils and up on the roof again and doing things I never could have done before. But
This is the only way that I've known you, but I can't imagine. I was telling you that I can't picture you any other way. You are so vibrant.
Yeah, again, it's our energy source, our fuel. And so it's amazing how vegetables, fruits and all can just change your whole well-being and your health, of course. Again, my cholesterol used to be through the roof, and so was my weight and my blood pressure, and so it's all that is plummeted. Energy has skyrocketed. I tell people.
It's like the best kept secret. The best kept secret.
Yeah.
And
allowing our bodies to heal themselves. That's like, as Dr. John McDougall says, getting away from the poisons, and start eating the foods that promote health and that allowing our bodies to heal. That's what we try to share on Plant Smart Living, is that you can prevent, reverse, and cure most of your chronic and degenerative diseases. Now that's good news.
That is very good news.
You don't have to rely on drugs or medication,
Well, like we were saying over lunch, that this has taken away my fear.
Yeah, it's
this
true.
has removed my fear and given me so much peace of mind that if anything does happen, that I have the tools within myself to fix things, and it's not that out of reach. But you must make the connection that everything you put into your mouth is having a profound effect on your well-being, and you have to bear that in mind, because initially you can eat something and you won't feel the effects right away. In fact, you'll feel a great deal of pleasure from very, very unhealthy foods. And so if you only look at the immediate impact of this connection between what you're eating and how you're feeling, if you only look at it short term, okay, well, I just had all this cheese and it was great, I feel wonderful. Well, you're never going to make that connection. If you step back and give yourself a week, 10 days, 15 days, I think probably a month, you'll know for sure. But if you step back and say, well, where was I 2 weeks ago and where am I now? And maybe those foods were having an effect long after I thought the meal was over.
We become our own experiment, as you put it, right?
That my body is my laboratory, and that the foods are my little test tubes. And if you can just be patient enough to not judge by the immediate impact of what you're feeling immediately after you eat, but view it long term. And that's where the difference becomes so phenomenal, so wonderful.
Yeah, this whole food plant-based diet it's not a diet. It's not an on again off a thing, on again off again. It's a lifetime. It's a lifestyle, just like the Asians. They're healthy and trim. They to their 80s and 90s because they've eaten a starch-based diet with some vegetables, and so it's in it for the long haul. But we need to certainly give our bodies enough time to see how they're going to react to these health-promoting foods.
And for some people, perhaps they'll feel it a lot faster. I was so ignorant about the whole thing that I was feeling relief, I was feeling better, but I still wasn't making the connection. And it was only really when I went online and started talking to other people that I said, that thing that I just went through and the thing I'm experiencing now, it's the food. It's the food. Bingo. Because not only did my energy improve and the weight came off, but my mind cleared. And it took me quite a long time to realize that my head was attached to my body, and that you can control many of your moods, many of your thoughts, unhealthy thinking, and just what we think of as anxiety and worry and everything, that those things will improve with a plant-based diet. Now, who knew? I mean, who knew?
Well, most of this information has been suppressed by the industries. That's why we're not hearing about it.
Yes. Yes.
And so, yeah, I know for me, I've had some, like, brain fog clear up, and even my eyesight improved a little bit. All my joint pain went away, my lower back pain issues have all gone away. And that's, of course, a lot of your lower back pain is caused from low blood supply, to your back, and so your narrowing of arteries. In fact, I went to a doctor one time a couple of years ago because I had a hot spot on my leg from doing some exercise, and I thought it was like an embolism or something. Well, they did some type of scan on my leg, on my blood vessels, and
yes, I had one.
And the doctor ended up telling me at the end, he said, "You have the arteries of an 80-year-old, and yet it didn't bother him at all." And this was like 3-4 years ago, So that was another thing that was always stuck in the back of my mind. That, I need to do something here. I have to get serious about my health, and I have a grandson and my 3 daughters that I want to be here for them.
Well, and what you're saying is that the doctor is telling you that you have the arteries of an 80-year-old, and it didn't bother him.
Didn't bother him.
So think about what does this mean? And you yourself are telling me stories about these friends that you've made, and you've helped them. You've helped them where all the doctors have,
treat them with medication and pills.
Thrown up their hands and said, well, this is just how things are.
I wanted to do a poster. It was called Treating Chronic Disease with Medication is like putting a Band-Aid on a festering wound.
Ugh.
That's basically what all they're doing. Because meanwhile, these chronic diseases are still festering and degenerating. All the while, they're still taking these pills. So, but in their mind, they're thinking they're healthy. And it's a green light that they can go back to eat these unhealthy foods, and not realizing that they're still eating the same poisons or continually eating them that cause the disease to begin with. And so, I used to just shovel food in my mouth, not thinking the side effects of it. But, the whole world, we're bombarded by misinformation and myths out there in the nutrition world and lies everywhere. And so you basically have to turn it on its head in order to find truth. You really have to dig for it as someone would dig for gold in a mine. And so,
and then of course the issue becomes, how could it be this simple? I think I believe this, I just found this, my body is reacting, my mind is reacting, but how could that be the truth? How could it be the truth?
And cost-free, basically.
So I feel like I hit the lottery here.
Correct. It's like discovering the fountain of youth. Just by
Which I always wanted to.
I think we all search for the fountain of youth, and yet it's been right at our fingertips here. Through your garden, through vegetables, through potatoes and peppers and so on. And so
just food.
It's amazing.
Food that grows out of the
And we're so
ground.
thankful for so many doctors out there that do promote the plant-based diet, and that's their line of defense is not medications, it's the food that's going to restore
and then of course
our health.
the doctors can help you, and they can monitor you, and they can tell you, they can guide you through the plant-based world. But after you've got a little bit of this knowledge under your belt, you can do it yourself. You can, and I don't mean to in any way minimize the impact that these doctors are having on us, but what I think that they would agree, they're trying to get the public to doctor themselves, to be their own nutritionists, to monitor themselves. Right.
I think it was Dr. John McDougall has one of his McDougall moments. He has it. It's titled "Learn to Say No to Your Doctor." And so I think that's good advice.
Which doesn't make him popular with doctors.
No, but it's the truth. The medical field can be very aggressive in your treatments because, sadly, most of the medical system is profit-driven. And so they want us as full-time customers to become hooked on their drugs and medication. And so, thankfully, we can be plant-based missionaries in this world. Telling people there is a solution to this medical problems, to your chronic diseases, that by simply switching over, we can restore our health. We can eat the foods we love, and that's the blessing. We're not depriving ourselves from foods. You get to eat as much as you want until you're full. It's not about portion control or counting calories.
One thing that I once wrote, which got a very, very gratifying response, was someone looked over at my husband Bob when we were sitting around the table at a wedding, and everybody else was eating meat and I think it was prime rib, and we had our little vegetable platter there, and they held up a fork full of meat and said, Bobby, hey Bobby, don't you feel deprived? And Bob said, yes, I sure do. I'm deprived of sleep apnea, I'm deprived of high blood pressure, I'm deprived of heart disease, and I'm deprived of 60 pounds. You know, I am definitely deprived. So no, there is no deprivation here. There is no deprivation whatsoever.
Yeah, that's a good response to that.
I was very proud.
Yeah, I was so pleased to hear that he was plant-based. I wasn't sure when I originally talked to you on the phone, you know, where he stood, and so I think on that picture you posted of him on the sale, I think you mentioned that he was plant-based, and so I couldn't have been more pleased to hear that.
Well, it was initially I took an interest in it, and I decided to try this and to do it. And after a couple of weeks, I felt that I was on the right track. And I broke the news to him. You know, I broke the news to him. Again, I wrote another essay about it where I wrote this conversation between the two of us. And I said, I'm going to be a vegan. And he said, what exactly is a vegan? And I said, well, it's a vegetarian, but worse. And I told him that I'm, you know, no meat, no dairy, no oil. And surprisingly, astonishingly, he immediately said, I want to do it too.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Wonderful.
Knocked me for a loop, because it was the last thing I would have expected from him.
Yeah.
He loved his meats, you know.
We can be very stubborn people, not wanting to change, even if the good news is right in front of us. Yeah, I'm kind of thankful. My wife, she had a little health scare earlier this year, and we actually went on the holistic cruise in March, and where Dr. Esselstein was there, and Dr. Neil Bernard, and Dr. McGregor, and so it was wonderful meeting them, but also having my wife be exposed to that teaching. In fact, it was her last year that had suggested for us to go on this cruise, and so I was excited to really be able to go on that cruise, for her to be under the teaching of these doctors, and so just to learn about that, the information there, and to know that there are doctors out there that really want to make us well. You know, not just to manage our chronic disease, but there is a way you can reverse it and cure a lot of your serious chronic disease.
And I think that the important point is, the cruise is just wonderful, but if you can't go on a cruise and you don't have the time to do that, or whatever it is, if you can't get over to a plant-based doctor, if you can't do this in a professional way, just pick up a book and learn the basics, because as I was saying, I could probably teach this to somebody in 15 minutes. This is not complicated stuff. So you may not understand all the ins and outs. You may not understand all the biochemistry involved, but just eat rice, eat sweet potatoes, eat corn, eat beans. Cut out everything that everybody else is eating that's not good, and eat these natural foods. It's okay. Now everybody knows.
Just like the Asians,
I just gave a lesson.
The Asians, they mostly rice and vegetables. Other cultures ate beans and corn, and so it's basically a starch-based diet.
As Dr. McDougall says throughout history.
And wonderfully, there are websites. We don't need them to get books. You know, there's a lot of good websites out there. Dr. John McDougall, they're all out there. You know, and you mentioned about not living in fear, and you know the blessing of learning that if your cholesterol's under 150, you can heart attack proof yourself. That to me is amazing.
Well, heart attacks were the thing that
number one cause of death. You know, every 30 seconds someone gets a heart attack.
And we all have our fears. We all have our. We've seen people around us suffering from different things, and for me, it was the heart attack, because I saw my father decline with heart disease over about 6 or 7 years before he finally succumbed. And it's all about the coronary artery disease, which everyone will point out to you. Well, you know, your father is ill, and your father was ill, and therefore
Well, they blame it on hereditary.
They're telling me how sick I was going to become. I went to a cardiologist, and even though I wasn't really very symptomatic, he wanted to start me on statins, blood pressure medication, which I did take for, I think, about 10 days before I said, this is nuts. I don't even have high blood pressure, you know. He put me on Lipitor, he put me on a baby aspirin, and he said, we're going to treat you very aggressively. And I said, treat what? You know, treat what very aggressively? Because I didn't think that I was that symptomatic. I didn't think that I was that ill. And of course the answer was, you are approaching the age that your father was when he succumbed, and this is what's going to happen to you, so we're going to get in there and stop it before. Well, I'm glad that my own instincts led me away from that kind of managed, dependent medical approach. But if I hadn't had those instincts, I don't know where I'd be.
You would have been shackled to the system, you know, full-time customer.
Yeah.
So thankfully you had that instinct to want to question.
Yes.
And that's what we try to emphasize here at Plant Smart Living, is to question everything.
Question.
You know? Exactly.
Yes.
Use critical thinking.
Yeah.
And so on. And anyhow, yeah, ever since and we want to emphasize reading ingredients on your food, you know?
Yeah.
Hidden oils and everything.
And maybe buy foods that don't have that many ingredients, you know.
Exactly.
Buy
less processed,
a
the better.
potato, a squash.
So anyhow, is there anything else you would like to share? Have we pretty much covered everything?
Yes, I think we have.
I think we have too, and I think it's been a real blessing having you here. It's been just a joy having you and Bob here, and just again meeting Bob, knowing he's plant-based.
Yeah.
And so we just had fun here together. We just thank you for joining us. This is Plant Smart Living with Farmer Fred. Until later, bye for now.